Self-care is also not arguing with people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Self-care is a term that gets used a lot in the wellness world. However, I have found the repetition to be incredibly helpful for me on my wellness life adulting journey. To me, self-care is allowing myself to be accepted by myself, to be fully and authentically who I am, and to not let other opinions cloud my identity. Easy. Done. No. Did I mention this is a journey? Maybe you can relate. It can be hard to accomplish that level of self-acceptance. Why, though? For what seems like forever, I've looked to others for my sense of self-worth. I've dated a lot, made and lost friends a lot, moved around a lot, been indecisive a lot, and looked up to my peers for advice, approval, and acceptance. The pursuit of being well-liked and accepted by society is like running on a hamster wheel 24/7. In time, you eventually get too tired and you fall off. You start to realize that defining your self-worth based on others' opinions is impossible and leaves you feeling empty and confused. Habits are hard to break, but we are never stuck with them. That is the beauty in the human spirit. We grow, we change, we adapt because we are survivors. We are self-aware enough to realize when we aren't being kind to ourselves. I would argue we all get to that realization eventually. What happens when we over-focus on being well-liked is we lose sight of our individuality. What makes us light up in this world, our own needs, goals, and desires. It's a lonely place. My self-care practice right now includes taking time to tune in, acknowledge how I am feeling, and to trust and love myself for the person I am and the person I am becoming. It challenges me when I am sitting in a group of people to not focus on whether or not I am liked, but to focus more on genuinely contributing and connecting in a way that is uniquely me. I am confident that there is a whole new level of self-love on the other side of self-acceptance. Let's celebrate our uniqueness today and every day. And with that being read, I want to welcome you back to the 127 Fit podcast. Today's guest is a wellness enthusiast, podcaster, blogger, and curious human. Today's guest is Natalie Dellinger. Natalie, I want to welcome you to the 127 Fit podcast.
Hey, Quentin. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, for sure. So we're going to just jump into a little bit of a warm-up. And the first question that I have for you, Natalie, is how do you start your day? And do you have some sort of specific morning routine that you kind of like to stick to on most days?
Yeah, that's a great question. Most days, I try and get up early. I really like the mornings, so giving myself some time to prepare for the day is really important. I love lemon water in the morning, so that just feels like something now that's become a habit that I crave. I will try and do some stretching or meditation. I'm actually in the middle of a 30-day meditation for June, so that's been part of my morning routine. And yeah, just taking some time. The more time I have before I have to rush to work, the better I feel prepared for the day.
Yeah, absolutely. Now the meditation challenge that you're on, is that like some sort of program or like some sort of app guided meditation, or is that just kind of something you're doing on your own?
Yeah, so I use the Calm app for meditation.
Okay.
I've had it for a few years, but I decided that my meditation practice was slipping. So it was June 1st and I was like, okay, I want to commit to 30 days. So I'm just doing it kind of with my podcast followers and Instagram followers, just encouraging everyone to take the time to meditate, because I find it really beneficial.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's great. All right, so do you have a favorite book? And if you have more than one, for these next three questions, please feel free to share. But is there maybe one or two favorite books or books that you like to gift often?
Yeah, the one book I give the most is called 10% Happier. It is a meditation book, speaking of meditation. It's by Dan Harris, who was a NBC newscaster who just ended up treating his body terribly and found meditation and found a lot of mental healing from that.
Cool.
So that's the one I give to people the most because it's very much an intro into how to meditate and why it's good for your brain.
Cool. Now, since meditation's already been brought up with the first two questions, I just want to let's dig a little bit deeper on that, because I know a couple of my previous podcast guests have been kind of harping on me to kind of get into meditation a little bit more, because like I'm like type A, like go, like my brain's always like firing, the light switch is always on, and they're like, Quentin, like you need to meditate, you need to like chill out a little bit. And I'm like really resistant because it's hard for me to stop and sit still. So for you, personally, Natalie, like what does meditation help you do, or how does it benefit you in your everyday life?
Yeah. So it's interesting that quote you read. The learning to tune in and hearing my own voice and like discovering who I am. I think a lot of that I credit to my meditation practice because it is so challenging to sit with yourself and have no other influence or distraction but your own thoughts. And I found that I was avoiding a lot of or just, I don't know what it was. When I started meditating somehow through yoga, actually, it was really one of the hardest things ever for me to actually be by myself. But in practicing it, I just felt like it helped me learn that my thoughts didn't have to be so powerful. Like if I had a thought that made me really sad, it didn't have to like ruin the rest of my day. Meditation like helped me kind of like just realize that thoughts are never ending, and it just mental health wise, it just made me more in tune with my body. And, cool. Appreciate you sharing that, because it's just something that I know at some point I will dabble in, or at least try, but I'm just mentally not ready for it right now. But it's one of those practices. I'd say probably 90 to 95% of my guests, meditation on some level, whether it's 5 minutes or 30 minutes, is a part of their morning routine. So obviously it's a big thing and very healthy. So I appreciate you sharing a little bit about that. So again, if there's more than one on this next question, feel free to share. But do you have a favorite quote or mantra that's been maybe important or impactful in your life overall? Yeah, my all-time favorite quote is "Be the change you wish to see in the world," which is a Gandhi quote. Absolutely, yep. That quote is like the first one that ever resonated with me, and I like that idea of leading by example. For sure. Besides that, a mantra that I've been sticking with or telling myself often is "You are worthy." Okay. That's been a big one for me lately. And what is that? What is that? That latter quote. Mean to you, like kind of personally? Yeah, I think it's something I struggled with just self-acceptance, self-worth. So that reminder of you are enough and you are worthy of happiness and everything that you can imagine in your life, any successes or love or friendships, you are worthy of that. So that's something I have to remind myself a lot, just from years of not believing that. Yeah. So do you feel like, because, and the reason I'm asking this question is because this kind of like self-love, self-care, self-worthiness is a reoccurring theme on my podcast and specifically with my female guests. And so do you feel like this is something that a lot of females in your life experience struggle with? Yeah, I think so. I don't know where exactly it stems from. I think part of it is human nature, or maybe that feminine energy of like giving and nurturing others, or like that mother mentality. I watched my mother care for everyone else but herself, and sort of learned by that example. I also think that in my family specifically, my heritage is like Italian, and a lot of the Italian women in my family are very much like the house, like they do everything, cooking, cleaning, and taking care of like their families and before themselves. So I don't know if that's really human nature or socialized like behavior. But a little bit of both, everything. I just remember growing up, like my mom would be like, hey, can you help me in the kitchen? And my brothers would be like out playing. And it was sort of like, oh, so I'm going to help you. But what about everyone else? And just sort of like a kind of because they knew I would be there to help kind of thing. Yeah. So I don't know what it stems from, but I think I do hear a lot of my friends saying they find themselves feeling that way. Like they can give so much, but they don't really know how to receive.
Yeah. I think, and I definitely think there's some sort of cultural significance to all of it, obviously, because, you know, especially in the past, like there was overall some pretty specific ways that like culturally, like kind of like men and women and all of that dynamic and the family dynamic kind of ran.
Sure.
And obviously now, you know, probably within the last, I'd say 20 years and stuff like that, you know, there's been like kind of a breakthrough with all that, where it's like traditionally like the man was kind of like the breadwinner, the woman stayed home, cared for the kids, took care of the house. Like that was in our culture, in our country, very traditional.
Yeah.
Not everybody did it that way, but traditionally speaking, like you go back 30, 40, 50 years, that's how it was. And we've moved away from that, for better or for worse. That's a topic we won't cover right now, but it's just the dynamics have changed. But I really feel like, you know, from my experience and just, you know, living life as a guy, like there's been a lot of cultural like pressures and like kind of pushing women kind of like in a certain way. And I think maybe that's where some of that kind of that struggle of self-love, self-worthiness has stemmed from. And you know, because we're all products of our home environment. And so if you saw your mom acting a certain way and living a certain way, obviously like you're gonna model that until you kind of come into that light of like, well, I'm not my mom, and like kind of who am I working through some of your stuff, right?
Yeah, and the other thing I know we'll talk in the future too, but is like I think women and appearance and body image and media and what we're exposed to also kind of shapes us to think that what we are naturally is not enough. It's like the makeup industry, the weight loss industry, the way we see women's bodies being talked about. I think it's constantly, we're kind of told that message of like you have to change everything you are to be beautiful or accepted in society, and that can be pretty problematic.
For sure, yeah.
So just understanding, I think for me it has been a big journey into just realizing that self-acceptance, like you are the way you are, and that's okay. That's beautiful itself.
Cool. All right, so why don't you, since you also have your own podcast, why don't you just share with the listeners what the name of your podcast is, and then after that, if you have like a favorite or most listened to podcast, that'd be great if you shared that as well.
Yeah, so my podcast is called Not Another Wellness Podcast.
It's
a health
name.
And wellness podcast.
Yeah, I love that. That's a good name.
It is a wellness podcast, but I think my goal with it is to make it, to destigmatize it, wellness, and just talk about the ways you can make yourself well, little tips and tricks.
Yeah.
My favorite podcast to listen to was the Joe Rogan Experience.
Yep, for sure.
He was the first podcast I discovered, and I just was so, what's the word? Intrigued by the level of just open conversation that he had, and I learned a lot from him, so he was an inspiration for me to start my own.
Yeah, he's gonna be in Denver in the fall, I think.
Really? I love him.
I posted when he posted up like his because he's a comedian, right?
Yeah.
He posted up like his comedian tour, and one of his stops in the fall is Denver, so I posted on his Instagram. I was like, hey man, I was like, when you come to Denver, can we meet up and can I get you on my podcast? Hey, I'm like, dude, I've thrown out messages to all kinds of people, and it blows me away, like who responds. Like you never know. So
you never
but yeah,
know.
He'll be here in the fall, so that'd be kind of cool. You might have to
awesome.
go check that out or something.
Seriously.
But is there like kind of on the Joe Rogan podcast experience? Has there been like maybe a guest or two that have really kind of stuck out or been impactful for you to listen to?
Yeah, I can't remember the name of this guy, but he had a recurring guest on there, and he talked a lot about like the socialization of people.
Oh, okay.
And he did talk about some of the things we just covered, like how to raise children to be like. He was talking about how he raises his kids, and it goes a lot into. Like treating children as adults, and I remember it was like the first time I ever heard someone talk about parenting that way. And he's also had super he had a guy on there once who was an anti-feminist.
Oh,
and it was so interesting. So he covers like every topic. And
Absolutely,
so the anti-feminist one, I was like, I need to hear what this guy has to say. It's sort of like when you like have such a strong belief and you're like sort of curious, like what does the other part of this belief say?
Yeah.
So I just love Joe because he just covers everything, and he gets himself in situations where he has to like really work to push like his viewpoints and like explain himself, and I love hearing him get out of that like pickle.
I've listened, like his podcasts are so long,
my
so
gosh.
I like to listen to ones that are like around an hour because I can food prep and finish one. So that detracts me from listening to his podcast is the length, and I'll listen to his podcast like if he has like a specific guest that I want to listen to, but he just sometimes, if not all the time, he just goes like off into like outer space.
Seriously.
And I'm like a very super like realist. Like I'm not much into like the fantasy and like the what ifs. And so sometimes I've listened to his and I just gotta turn it off. I'm like, dude, like I can't handle all that. But
he's also
but it's
stoned
good,
most of the time.
Yeah,
so
right. There you go.
Yeah.
That probably plays into a little bit of maybe some of that.
He's just an entertaining person.
Yeah,
sure.
no, but you can't hate on the fact that he's got a gift. You know what I mean? Like he's got a gift, and
it's a very curious person.
It's good stuff. So,
totally.
Very good. Very good. All right. So, Natalie, we're going to kind of just take a dive into kind of like your backstory. So if you don't mind sharing with myself and the listeners kind of where you grew up, kind of like what the younger years look like, maybe some of the family dynamics, were you involved in sports or extracurricular activities, and just give us a little bit of a snapshot of kind of what life was like for you when you were growing up.
Yeah. I was born and raised in Norwalk, Connecticut, which is an hour from New York City. Raised around a lot of family members, so family was a huge part of my childhood. I have 2 older brothers, so played all the sports and was always outside. Just had a really fun childhood. Was raised alongside like a lot of cousins. I played like every sport. Became swimming was like the one I stuck with.
Sweet.
Swimming all throughout my whole life, but in high school and college.
Cool.
Family dynamic. It was funny being the only girl of my siblings. It definitely made me a little more independent and tough because my older brothers would hang out together, and then I was sort of there on the side or trying to get involved, but like ended up getting hurt or something. But overall, like really positive childhood. My parents met traveling, so travel has always been a big part of my life.
Are you super free spirited wanderlust then, or what?
Yeah, I have been, like not so much lately, but I got to take a gap year after my freshman year of college and do a ton of traveling and backpacking trips then, which was awesome. Did some solo travel at like 19, which I'm like can't even believe I did now. Travel is huge. I studied abroad a few times, just really loved getting away from home and the comforts and seeing what would happen on the other side, like learning about culture. Loved all that stuff. So that was a huge thing. Once I gave up sports, it was really traveling. And then my favorite thing I've ever done was I moved to New Zealand after college for a year.
Cool.
And got that experience working in restaurants and lived in a mountain town. And so I've done a lot of shifting in my life, and I'm always so curious about the way other people live, which obviously explains the travel. And recently moved to Colorado. That was kind of my attempt to still explore the world, my own country this time, but get out of my comfort zone again.
Right.
So I love like mixing it up like that. I think I thrive in that challenge of starting new and reworking habits and that kind of thing.
So I did swim team when I was younger. So what was what was your stroke?
I was a butterflyer.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's legit because that's the hardest stroke.
Yeah.
Cool. Was it like more sprints or long distance?
More sprints. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Sweet.
I loved that team aspect of swimming and the individual competition of racing. Yeah.
It's a great sport. When I have kids and stuff, that's going to be one of the sports I not make them do, but encourage them to do because I think it's it's an awesome sport.
Yeah.
And I just feel like swimming in general, I feel like is super underrated, because like when I grew up, my younger brother and myself, we were in the summertime, because we were in Iowa, so obviously not really the winter time, but summertime, like we were at the pool half hour before they opened. We were there from like 1 o'clock to 9 o'clock at night if mom or dad came and for during like family hours or whatever. It's just, I have so many fond, good memories from childhood through like swimming, and I just think swimming as a sport, swimming in general, is so underrated, but it's so good.
So good.
It's so
it's
healthy.
a good skill too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like my boyfriend now is not a strong swimmer, and it limits you if you're not. Like you kind of need to know the skill and like be comfortable, because otherwise you can get yourself in a situation that is can be unsafe really quick.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Now in regards to kind of like the moving and everything, do you get like, because like I'm super like free spirited, and like for me it's like every like 2 years or give or take, like I'll get like this, I call it like the itch, where it's like I kind of get like antsy, and I'm like, dude, like I gotta move, I gotta go try something else. Do you kind of have that or not? Not really.
Less as I get older. I'm not that old, obviously, but yeah, I definitely do. I've struggled between the grass is always greener aspect and just like making the best of where you are, and I kind of toggle back and forth between that. Yeah, I do get that itch, and like even now I love that I have like a stable routine and I work and I have like that stability, but there's such a big part of me that just wants to like drop everything, live out of a backpack and like give it all up. So I'm like, I don't need all this stuff. What am I doing?
Yep, for sure.
So yeah,
I've got the itch right now to move to Arizona, but like where I am professionally and just like stuff that I've got going on out here, I'm just like, Q, like you got to chill out, man. You got to like just stick it out for like a few more years. Keep building what you've got going on, and just, you know, lay low, take care of your business. But like I'm just like every 2 years or something, it's just like, dude, like I just get antsy.
It's
and
hard.
I think it's just like I don't know like why or what, but it's like it's in my DNA. But also I'm learning, like kind of what you said, is like there's a lot to learn for people like us in like kind of sitting still and staying in place, building relationships, connecting with people, and things of that nature. Because it's really easy for me, and I'm sure it's probably easy for you, to like kind of blow in and blow up and then blow out. And it's like, peace, see you later, I'm out, I'm going to go on to the next thing. But sometimes it's hard for us to get out of that comfort zone of like kind of just like wandering and moving around. It's like get out of that comfort zone and hang out in maybe one spot for a while, you know.
And the one thing that's hard too, I find, is when you move around a lot, you're not building those relationships, and you keep starting over.
Yep.
And sometimes, like, I found myself here, and I was like, wow, if I really needed somebody, I've only met these people for a couple months. Do I really know them enough that like I have those people on my side, and am I going to be there for them? And it is kind of funny, but I think overall worth it. And life is short, so if you have that burning itch, I think it's good to like lean into it and decide if you're avoiding or if you're actually like looking for an adventure and you know.
Yeah, no, that's a great perspective. So okay, so did you go to college then and stuff? Because I know you said you went overseas for like a year.
Yeah, so I did go to college in upstate New York, and I swam in college, so that was still a big part of my life, athletics. Yeah.
What did you study then in school?
I was a global studies major, kind of the travel aspect, studying international relations and how different cultures work in the world. Okay, sweet. And environmental studies too. Okay,
very cool. So what was kind of college like with you? I'm sure you had probably, because you were on the swim team, that was kind of like your crew or whatever, but was college a pretty good experience overall? Or?
It was. The swim team was a really good part of my life, and then I also lived in a women's resource center, which is sort of like a feminist house, they called it, and that was really fun. I found like some of my best friends there. It was the only campus-owned all-girls house that wasn't a sorority, but it was meant to empower women with women's rights and women's health, so we wrote a newspaper, column. So people would send us questions, and it was just a really positive group of women to be a part of. Yeah.
Cool.
Loved it.
All right. So, let's I want to kind of start talking about, just the struggle. Let's talk about, well, what did post college look like for you? Like, and I want you to start, if you don't mind, kind of unpacking like maybe some of the like internal struggles that you were going through and working through like as a young woman into your 20s in college and post college. Okay,
yeah.
So like what happened like after college? I know you were moving around a lot, different things, but what were some of the things maybe that you were struggling with like as a young woman?
Yeah, so sometime in middle of college, I developed an eating disorder.
Okay.
It came on really fast, and it wasn't something I ever dealt with before. I would say up until that point, I was pretty free-spirited, happy, had a very positive view of myself.
Right,
and somewhere along the way, I got kind of trampled down. I had like a really bad relationship and was like cheated on, and like had a few things happen, and I didn't know how to handle like the sudden upheaval of my life.
Right.
And for some reason, I started controlling what I was eating. It felt like something that I could have control over when all this turmoil was sort of happening in my personal life. And I was all of a sudden noticing that a lot of my friends were thinner than I was, or I thought they were prettier or whatever. And it changed from an healthy admiration to my friends and peers to an unhealthy comparison.
Okay.
And I started thinking that I wasn't good enough, and that I wasn't thin enough, or I wasn't able to cope with life. And all of a sudden just things turned, and I don't even really remember the turning point, but I think that relationship was a big part of it. So then I struggled with that eating disorder in secret and wouldn't share about it openly because I was so ashamed of it, and I never thought I would be that person that struggled with food because I never had been, and I'd seen that happen to so many friends of mine. So it was a really conflicting time. Again, I hid it from everybody I knew, so it got in the way of my close relationships because I wasn't honest. I wasn't feeling healthy. I wasn't feeling like myself, and I was also hiding a disordered eating tendency. Right. So that was something that I would say like that was the hardest part of college for me. It was just I just had a really bad body image issue. I had a really amazing school counselor, and at university sometimes they offer this as a free service, and it was huge. She would like have me come in, and she was the only person I could open up to, and she really helped me kind of work through why I was restricting food, making myself throw up, etc. She was like digging in and be like, what is it that you feel before this happens? Like, how can we help you? Unfortunately, it wasn't a quick fix. I graduated college on and off with this eating disorder, moved to New Zealand, was still struggling with food a lot, worked in restaurants, which was kind of like food was everywhere, and I didn't really know how to navigate it, and all my meals were at the restaurant, so it sort of, it was really hard for me to like maintain that restrictive eating while I was also around food all the time. And then somewhere along the line, like I started doing yoga, I started meditating, I started just, I guess, growing up a little bit and stopped hating who I was and started accepting who I was. That's where the meditation piece comes in, honestly. I think the first time I meditated, I started crying because I could hear the negative self-talk fully. Like I sat with how hard I was on myself for the first time instead of ignoring it with food or, whatever, other self-destructive just behavior. And eventually, I mean, it was a long recovery process, but that self-worth piece manifested in a lot of other ways. I think I always worried that I didn't have friends or I didn't fit in with the majority of people in college. Even in high school, I struggled with that. That became like a theme in my life of just not feeling like anyone wanted to be my friend. And I think it's just, I don't know why it was that age, but it just seemed like everything that I had buried in my life sort of piled up on itself and sort of just exploded.
So,
and
go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, thankfully, through a lot of this like wellness industry, that's why I'm so passionate about it. I was able to find tools from watching other people's blogs, podcasts, Instagram to like build up my self-worth again.
Now, so was it was the eating disorder bulimia then?
Yeah.
Is that, so you ate food and then you would go throw it up?
Yeah, it's interesting. I started restricting, so just not eating a lot.
Yeah.
Like I was like, oh, I shouldn't eat a lot because I want to be thin. And then through that crazy restrictive behavior, I was obviously starving. Mm-hmm. So then I would have these periods of binging where I would like be sitting in my room or just like unable to stop eating because I was so undernourished. And then I would freak out that I had that period of shoveling food into my mouth, like in private usually. Mm-hmm. And then I would just feel like overcome with this idea that I had to get rid of it. Like I had to release all the food. And usually like I don't know if anyone else has dealt with binging, but you eat so much that you actually physically feel ill.
Yeah.
So it was like a natural idea to like, oh, well, now I feel like I need to throw up, so I'm just going to do it.
Right.
Crazy.
Yeah,
crazy,
no, for
crazy,
sure,
like
for sure.
Flow and cycle.
Yeah,
that
well,
became a
the
habit.
psychology and the what's going on in your brain and that is very interesting, you know.
Yeah,
so
and
you said, yeah, absolutely powerful. Now you said this behavior came on during college, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you've been swimming for a long time. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously, when you're swimming, you're like in a bathing suit. You're around, other, girls that are in bathing suits. Guys have Speedos or whatever they're wearing, like, hardly anything. So, like, so what I'm trying to say is, like, you were around people, like, minimally dressed and, like, seeing different physiques and different bodies and all that. And so it's interesting how at then kind of like, when you were in your early 20s, at a certain point, you're still on the swim team and still, around all these type of physiques and bodies and stuff, that there was like something where it kind of sounds like it just, the shift or something clicked where it's like, I need to be thinner or this mindset just kind of, became something, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's interesting, Quentin, too, because like, oh my God, I forgot about the bathing suit thing. I remember just being like, oh, I have to be as thin as possible in this bathing suit. And I never cared about that. And all of a sudden I was like weighing myself before practice, weighing myself after practice. Like if I felt like I ate too much that day, I would like try and like exercise more. It just was crazy. It was like all of a sudden I was overconsumed with what my body looked like. And that was the only thing I cared about.
So you mentioned that you think maybe a catalyst in this behavior change was like a relationship that didn't work out or whatever.
Yeah.
So, and if you don't mind me asking, did that individual like say something to you about the way you looked that triggered this behavior?
Yeah.
Because there has to be some sort of catalyst that got your brain to click into thinking like, I've got to be thinner, all of these things. Because like there's always a catalyst in life that gets us start to think in a certain way.
Yeah.
So is that something maybe in that relationship that the individual like called you fat or said you're ugly or like you need to lose weight or something like that that maybe started to implant those thoughts? Or
I don't think there was any like verbal communication of it. I think what it was is that he lived with some girls and had a lot of girlfriends in this sorority, and they were all very thin. And I remember this one time we were making dinner and I was like watching how much food they were taking, and I was like, wow, I would have eaten so much more. And I was like, wait, I don't know, these people are important and they're really cool and they're eating half the portion that I am eating. Okay. That was the first thing. I don't remember though like him saying anything to me. I actually remember him being like, are you eating? He like asked me like, are you eating? I don't notice that you are. And I think I got pretty thin. And I think it was just accumulation of all the pressure that I put on myself and that I was feeling from like just being around other girls who were really thin.
Right.
I don't remember. Yeah. I mean, if there is, I blocked it out because I tend to do that with like things that are ugly.
For sure. Was there in college when you were swimming, was there like a lot of external pressure from like the coaches and stuff to, like max out your performance or to reach certain expectations in regards to performance?
Totally. And swimmers are interesting. Like swimmers aren't typically the thinnest people.
No.
We're swimming. You need a lot of muscle. You swim for 4 hours a day and you eat a ton of food.
Right.
And I remember our coach sitting us down and being like, all right, we need to we need to talk about nutrition. What are you eating that's going to like give you fuel? And he was sort of talking about what we were putting into our bodies, like not drinking a lot, etc. And so I started to want to get better at swimming. And I think wanting to be a better athlete, I started really fine-tuning what I was putting into my body. And I really wasn't drinking alcohol or anything, and it was really focused on like how can I it was part like performance encouraged as well. Like I was like, if I'm lighter but stronger or something, if I have less body fat but more muscle, that'll be better for swimming, and I'll be happier, and it will lead to X, Y, and Z.
It's really fascinating how, you know, how powerful our brain is and how powerful our thoughts are, and how, you know, if we're not in control of our brain, if we're not in control of our thoughts in like a positive sense, how like our brain and our thoughts can just spin out of control really quickly, and whatever we're thinking, that's what we're gonna do. That's how we're gonna live. That's who we are and who we're gonna become. You know, that's something I know I try to touch on with my physical education students, is, you know, talking to them about the thoughts that we think and how powerful our brain is, how powerful our thoughts are. But it's just interesting how we can just be going in life. But I think a lot of times in life it's just some exposure, like small little exposures here and there, like you were talking about. It's like maybe this relationship, maybe some pressure with the coach and being on the swim team, and then seeing these skinny, cute, cool girls. You know, it's just an accumulation of just little things that get implanted in our brain, and then all of a sudden
when
it
you're
kind of
weak,
becomes this big thing.
I feel like when something happens and you feel not like you can't handle it, all of a sudden it just like throws everything off, and all those things come in. You're like, maybe I have to change everything about myself for this to work out, or for him to love me. I think too, like finding out that I was being cheated on, that worthiness piece was like, okay, now you're really not worthy. I took that personally as like, he was dating you, but he actually rather be with other people because you're not good enough for him. And that too, that's probably part of it. And I know we talked about this before we started recording. You mentioned CrossFit. Do you CrossFit?
No, I don't.
But you obviously exercise at some
point. I mean, I do bodybuilding.
Stuff, so, okay. Yeah. So the CrossFit, I started doing CrossFit almost 3 years ago. Okay. I don't do it anymore, but that is a very interesting piece of like the worthiness thing and body image. So I actually found through CrossFit, women were supporting like being strong and capable instead of thin and nothing, and like frail and nothing. And that was super helpful for me to join that community and be like, oh my gosh, I don't want to wither away to nothing. I actually want to do a handstand. I want to do pull up. I want to, but that community as well can turn, like people would be like, oh, what's your body fat percentage? And I'm going to count my macros, and like, oh, I had a cheat meal today. And it was very like interesting how something so healthy could also, if you take it too far, can turn into an unhealthy obsession of fitness. No,
that's a great point, and that's but that's human nature.
Totally.
Like we're always going to be, I mean, just like I read your Instagram post to kind of introduce you to the 127 Fit podcast listeners in our community, is, you know, you're just talking about just like, you know, we're just naturally like competitive, and we're gonna just naturally kind of go in a certain way and stuff. You know what I mean? But it's just natural for us to be competitive and to want to like win and all of that. And I think some of us, you know, that competitiveness and being kind of like more natural is stronger in some of us than other people. But you know, you kind of like in reading that Instagram post talked about kind of like the human spirit and things like that. And you know, we're made to survive and to win and to thrive and stuff. So
that's a good
it's
point.
like that. It's just innate within us. So we're a lot of us, because I'm an extremist. Whatever I do, I'm going to take it to the extreme. Which anytime you take anything to the extreme, it's not going to be healthy at some point.
You have to just check yourself. Like what am I doing this for? Is it for me? Is it for that external pressure, or like that competitive side that can sometimes be taken too far?
Because the competitiveness, I know that's like that performance anxiety, you know, because I've struggled with anxiety since I was a tween, and a lot of that, when I look back and analyze my life, a lot of that started around when I was, starting to compete like in junior high, like in track and in sports on different teams, and that anxiety was like performance anxiety, and that just kind of snowballed into stronger forms of anxiety throughout my life outside of athletics and sports. So it can be there there can just be, when you take things to the extreme, it cause a lot of anxiety and pressure and a whole host of other things. So all right, so back to your story. So you come across yoga, and then you come across CrossFit. So those two things seem to be catalysts for you to kind of step outside of this eating disorder realm and start moving into a healthier life and lifestyle. So you said that the yoga kind of helped you with kind of like the meditation and kind of like tuning into your thoughts and who you are, and CrossFit kind of helped you understand that chicks don't have to be like on a treadmill for 5 hours and super skinny.
You nailed it.
Strong and powerful and stuff. So
with
those two things, yoga and CrossFit, like just expand or expound a little bit more, Natalie, on just like kind of how you fully came out of the eating disorder. And I know probably even up to this point, like there probably is some anxiety around food for you.
Sure.
But just how you really stepped out of that and were able to become a little bit healthier and move on from that season of your life.
That was a really good recap. That's exactly what happened. Like you said, the yoga piece was the meditation, the learning how to breathe, learning how to like tune in and calm down. I think anxiety around food it was so high. So
for sure.
Yoga was like I'd lay in shavasana and be really quiet and still, and it was like, oh wow, there's peace here too. Like I can have that if I practice it more.
Right.
I did get my yoga teacher training, which was
cool.
a very amazing self-exploration kind of piece while you're learning how to teach yoga. It's very deep and spiritual. That was really heavy, and that's like I said, the first time I meditated was at that training, and I cried. I was like, oh my god, I'm so mean to myself. Like that's so. Right. So I wanted to dig and find out why, and try and rewrite those habits. I think yoga is amazing. I really find it to be beneficial for athletics. I think it helps support the body and stretch, and the breathing piece is helpful for life, learning how to control your breathing, and so yoga, I think, just for life is just a super important thing to keep going, keep stretching.
For sure. So
you can do all the activities, and CrossFit was just great, and it gave me that competitive, a place to be competitive again, a team aspect. I loved like going to the gym, and people were very encouraging. I loved the body image piece. It was amazing. Sure, I recently just occurred to me that years had gone by without that emotional eating to an extreme. I think I still struggle with it a little bit.
Absolutely.
Like if something triggering or bad happens, or something comes up, I can feel that fluttering feeling of, oh my gosh, I don't know how to control my life, and that sometimes I think I'll turn to food. It's way healthier now, and I'm way more aware of it, and I'm way more like kind to myself about it, and I don't demonize food anymore, which is huge. I'm like, oh, two scoops of ice cream, let's go. But I also love salads, I love vegetables, and I'm focusing more on what makes me feel good after just so many years of pushing myself to extremes of sports, pushing myself, not nourishing my body, not knowing how to, just diving into nutrition just on my free time. That would be the third piece that really helped. It's like, so here you need fats, you need carbs, you need proteins, you need a combination of all these things. You need to just nourish your body and feel good. How can you do that? And that was really the piece that I think helped me be more comfortable around food again.
Right. Yeah. So yoga, CrossFit, and then, just kind of learning nutrition and how to fuel yourself for life.
Yeah.
Now, in regards to nutrition, what and for me, like I understand personally, like we're all different and it's very individualized. So like I know that whatever you're going to share in regards to nutrition, it works really good for you. It might not work for somebody else.
Right.
But what have you found to be like the most freeing for you personally in regards to the way that you eat?
Yeah, the biggest number one thing is not giving myself rules.
Okay.
So diets don't work because I can take that to an extreme, like you talked about, and become unhealthy with it. I don't follow any diets. I just am a little bit picky, I guess. Like, I love vegetables. I always have. As a kid, I used to eat salads but I also love French fries. So a lot of times I order like 2 things I love. Like, I want a good salad. I like the lightness of like vegetables with like some protein. But I like fries. I never want to restrict ever again, really. So I'm really just more at ease with that. But I do eat mostly vegetables, I think. I was a vegetarian in high school and college, so I don't full on eat red meat, but occasionally I'll crave it. So I give into that. Like, I'm more of a flexitarian, and just a flexible way of eating where I don't say no to myself. But I do pay attention to, like, all right, a lot of food doesn't make me feel great, so, like, let me just know that. And overall, I'm just trying to help make myself feel good. So if it's food for pleasure, that's a big piece I learned in my last podcast interview. She was saying, like, don't ever restrict something you love from yourself. Yeah. It's not going to work.
I listened to that episode, and that was very, very interesting takeaway.
Yeah, so that's been huge. Oh, that's been a big one. Just the no rules thing, the no diet thing, and just also cooking, learning how to cook food was really helpful and just, like, fun. And just making food fun again. It's, like, such a big part of life. And
for sure.
It feels good to be able to be on that side of looking at food.
And so you said you're Italian, and you grew up, with a lot of family around, and from my understanding, food is a pretty big part of the Italian culture. So
and overeating.
Well, overeating and like the pasta,
the pasta
and
the bread,
and all the stuff that
totally
tastes really good, but probably isn't the best for us.
Yes.
In a general health speak, but you said something that is very interesting to me. You said that you were a vegetarian in high school and then in college as well.
Yeah.
So how did that come to be?
Yeah, I had to write a paper in I guess it was high school about you pick your own topic, and for some reason I chose veganism because I was like, why are people vegan? I didn't get it. And it was like a new trendy thing. So I did some research into the way food is processed today.
Right.
And from learning, I was like, wow, I had no idea the amount of like antibiotics and how unhealthy a lot of the chicken and the steak and stuff we're eating, like how unhealthy those animals' lives are and then we consume them. So I started experimenting. I was like, oh, let me try being vegan. Didn't work. Didn't work for me. But I did feel just better just eating less meat. So it was a kind of easy transition. And then I didn't have to say no. Well, I did, but I'd say, oh, I'm vegetarian. I'm not going to eat that burger. So it was really that paper, like doing research on the way food's processed and just realizing it's really free range, has a lot of crap in it.
For sure. Yeah. Well, I think that plays into, it's just interesting because you didn't mention that, maybe you forgot, I don't know, but like you just brought that up and that like just triggered something in my brain because like we're talking about your eating disorder and like you said you don't ever want to restrict again and all that, but then you said high school, like those are some very formative years and we're super impressionable, junior high school, and so like if you started that process at that time, that was like something going on psychologically in your brain already of like that restriction and having like some sort of issue or issues with like food or whatever. So like I think if we look back at your life and kind of like maybe pinpoint something to where really some of those smaller exposures we were talking about earlier that kind of snowballed into the full-blown eating disorder, that could be something that was already starting to condition your brain to restrict and to kind of cut out maybe certain things and eating a certain way, maybe causing maybe some anxiety because of how the meat is made. You know what I mean? Like it's all building, and then when that kind of that I'm not going to say catastrophic, but kind of like that negative experience with the boyfriend and cheating on you, and I think all of that stuff kind of like snowballed into then that eating disorder because those seeds were already planted in your brain. You know what I mean?
I was like,
it's just interesting that you said that. And I'm like, okay, we got to take a step back and find out how all that happened because that seems to be an important
related, obviously. I never thought about that.
Where things ended up being with you in regards to the eating disorder.
Yeah, and in being passionate about the environment too, I think there's a lot of fear around like, oh my gosh, we're killing the planet. What can we do? And the food piece was a part of that conversation that I was so passionate about. And I did start demonizing food. Like even in high school, I was like, no meat, that's bad.
Right.
To me, it was bad.
Yeah.
And then vegetables and like, other things are good. And then it just,
So for the listeners out there that don't know what it means to like demonize food, would you just be willing to kind of just explain that a little bit, please?
Yeah, this is something I'm learning a lot more about in my recovery, I guess, of eating disorders, is that there is this culture that we have around food where we demonize certain food groups. So Kara, this girl who I actually interviewed on my last episode, she works with women with eating disorders, and she was talking about diet culture and how diets just basically pick a food group and they tell you that that's the key to weight loss, is eliminate carbs or eliminate fats or eliminate processed foods, and how it just changes every couple of years. It's something else that we're all like afraid of. Oh my God, don't eat butter. Or now it's like, don't eat sugar. And people, they advertise it that way. Like, oh gosh, this is like the worst thing you could ever do. So that demonizing of various food products or just giving them more value in diet culture in life, I think is a slippery slope. And I think we all feel that to some degree. We all hear the rules and we think we have to stop listening to our bodies and listen to what other people are saying are good and bad for us. And that ultimately, I think, played a big role in my story.
Okay. So why don't you CrossFit anymore?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, it's so expensive. I loved it. And then I moved out here and I wasn't loving it anymore.
Okay.
And I still miss like the hard workouts, but I was finding that I think I was going too far and too extreme. I wanted to work out every single day, and there were parts in CrossFit where I worked out every single day and was like, oh my gosh, how many pull-ups can I do now? And I got really competitive, so I decided to, as I live out in Colorado now and there's so much outdoor access, to take that away and see how I could like find my way without CrossFit. I was thinking I was kind of getting dependent on it for like my happiness. I love being active though. I love hiking and running and biking and swimming. So it's been like an interesting transition. I miss like the strength that I had and I miss the team aspect, but I was realizing I was spending a lot of money and focus on only my body again. I was worried I was going too far in that direction. So I just decided to take a break. So I've actually since January haven't really belong to any gym, and it's kind of it's been a fun little play, like what do I need, and I definitely miss it, and it'll be interesting to see if I come back eventually, maybe not every day, if I can do like 3 days a week, just find like what works for me. 7 days a week was not sustainable.
No, that's not sustainable for anybody. Even CrossFit Games athletes, you know.
I know. So I was just like, oh, I have to work out every day, and so it's been nice to kind of like release that strict outlook on exercise for me, and I'm sure it
started causing probably some anxiety and some pressure, and
totally
just going down an old pathway that you've already been down and that you don't want to go down again, right?
Yeah. I'm kind of just take away anything and just like be with myself is like my big focus right now. Focus on my podcast, focus on what health and wellness means to me, on meditating, and just I sort of think of it too, I don't want one thing to take over my life anymore, so I want to be like a generalist where I can dabble in yoga and maybe do some CrossFit and do some running instead of just focusing on one thing. And swimming was all that. It was all swimming for so many years. So I think I like that comfort of having one thing to fall back on, but now as I'm getting older, I'm starting to explore what else is out there and be a little more flexible. So
what's something that you, and this can be in any area of your life, it doesn't have to be nutritionally or fitness wise, but what's something that you are exploring right now that you've kind of been enjoying that adventure in regards to exploring?
That's a good question. Since I've moved to Colorado, I've been a beginner in like everything.
Okay.
So what's been interesting is I came out here and started skiing every weekend because that's what people do here. So I was like, let me try that. I was like, yeah, okay, I'm not very good at skiing and it doesn't feel good to not be good. That's interesting. I'm sort of like noticing. And now I went rock climbing for the first time this year, and I tried mountain biking. And what I'm really exploring is that feeling of allowing yourself to be a beginner and like be open to the experiences that come from trying new things.
Right, yeah.
So it's like a good and bad. It's been hard. It's been a challenge, but it's been a really beautiful thing to not be in my comfort zone here and just trying out all of the new things that I can and finding what is the right one for me for now. Anyway.
Yeah, and from your backstory, that kind of that exploring and being a beginner seems to be something that's in your DNA, because when you were younger, especially, you said, you did a lot of traveling and you were kind of back then always a beginner. So it seems like you've kind of come full circle. I mean, you're not old or anything. You're a young girl, but you know what I mean? Like kind of just like working through the the eating disorder and working through just kind of like finding yourself and all that. And it seems like you've kind of come full circle in the sense of like going back to maybe some of that stuff that really lights you up and stuff. You know what I mean? And focusing more on just that positive energy.
Staying curious.
Yeah.
Hungry.
It's good.
Eager to learn.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So, in regards to being a podcaster and a host of a podcast, what's kind of what does that mean to you, and like why did you want to start a podcast, and then maybe share just one takeaway from the interviews or the experience of being a podcaster?
Yeah. It started pretty randomly. I thought it would be so cool to be a guest on a podcast one day and be someone wanted to talk to. And here I am on your podcast.
Here I am.
Yeah. And I thought that I was missing deep conversations with people in my life at the time. So I started the podcast in January 2018.
Cool.
And the months leading up to that, I felt sort of like I had all these interests, but no one to talk about them with. And I wanted to know more about the people in my life and actually sit down with them and find out their story. So it started that way. I started reaching out to wellness entrepreneurs in the area, and it was so cool to hear how different everybody's journey is.
Right, for sure.
But the underlying theme was that everybody was working to find what lights them up in the world, what they were passionate about, and leaning into that, and how it could turn into business for a lot of people. And that's something I've seen for myself and hope for myself. So it was really cool to find those inspired people, get to hear their stories, what led up to them starting a business in the health and wellness industry, and then just talking about these topics like nutrition that I was obviously so passionate about for various reasons. It's been amazing. I think everybody has a story to tell. It reminds me that you can never know what somebody's going through or has gone through, but that passion is an incredible force, and it's incredibly motivating and powerful, and everybody has something that lights them up. And that pursuit for me, finding this podcast for whatever reason, deciding to start it, wanting these deep conversations, it truly brings me the most joy out of anything in my life, and the connections that I was striving for. So I think it's been incredible, and such a pleasure to get to connect with people like you and have guests of my own, and see and talk to people in a way that I don't think we do enough of. We're so busy with like social media and the facade and the highlight reel. It's so great to get real and just share what it's like to be human. Cool.
So I want to just touch on non-negotiables, because I firmly believe that once we kind of realize like who we are and why we're here and the direction we're going to take our life and everything, a part of that is having like non-negotiables in our life. Because like if we're completely like just like, oh, it is what it is, whatever, I'm just gonna go with the flow, like you're gonna go with the flow, you're gonna get tossed to and fro, you're gonna allow people to come in and take advantage of you and all that. So if you don't mind sharing, just like, Natalie, personally for you, like just and it can be like, generally speaking, it doesn't have to be like in regards to like an intimate relationship or friendship or anything like that, but just like generally speaking, what are some non-negotiables for you, and some things that you have found like, hey, this is who I am, and I'm not going to change or shift in these non-negotiables? Yeah,
that's a really good question, and something I've struggled with having a voice about. Like, what do I need? Right. I still hear that all the time. Like, I can be very indecisive, and I want everyone else to be happy. It's like my nature, I guess. But non-negotiables for me, as I'm learning, is time to, like, I'm a little bit of a homebody. Like, time by myself is huge.
Yeah.
I was just talking about this the other day, that I can easily be distracted and want to not miss out on other plans with friends or family in town or being outside, and it's exhausting. Mm-hmm. So if I don't have that time for myself, I don't feel like I show up authentically. So I'm learning more and more how important my me time is, and that a lot of that looks like, you know, my morning routine, like making sure I have things that feel good. Like, I love taking baths and like reading or writing. Journaling is really like therapeutic. So those are things I have to keep in my life. And then just finding people I can chat with, like, deeply. Mm-hmm. I have a really hard time with small talk in groups of people. Like, I just don't thrive there. I don't feel like myself.
Either, yeah.
I'm like,
can't handle that stuff.
Yeah, and like it's sad because I'll be around a big group of friends and they're all so close, and I'm just sitting there like, how do I contribute? I'm so used to just digging deep. So having that to keep me feeling kind of connected to people that are important in my life is huge. So be it like family or friends that I can connect deeply with, just keeping podcasting in my life has been so healthy. And like some kind of activity. My body loves to be active, so that's something that I need to have to feel like I sort of gets like stress out of my brain and makes me feel good and keep my body healthy.
Cool.
It's
cool.
huge.
Thanks for sharing that. What's your take on like limiting beliefs, limiting factors, like conditioned beliefs, conditioned just thought processes, or however you want to word that. And it kind of goes back to like what we were talking about earlier about, you know, traditionally our culture kind of had, you know, a certain way that guys showed up and how girls showed up in regards to family dynamics and work and all that. And our, like we've already covered, you know, on the podcast, like the mindset and the thoughts are very important and very powerful. So what's your take, and kind of what's been your experience with like these limiting beliefs, conditioned beliefs and things like that?
Yeah, that's a newer phrase to me. It's funny you mention it. A couple episodes of my podcast back, I said something to the guest after we stopped recording, and she was like, well, that's a limiting belief. And I was like, whoa, what? What do you mean? I think a lot of my self-talk could fall under that category in the past. Thinking things were stuck, or thinking I was stuck a certain way, or thinking that things were not changeable, I guess. So those show up. I think it kind of goes back to that worthiness thing. Like, for some reason, the story I've told myself is you don't really fit in with anyone, or you're not like other people. You're just like different and not in a good way. I think I would just, you know, dismiss or judge others if I wasn't feeling welcomed into a situation. It's like, well, you know, they just don't like you or something. So it's a hard one to answer. I think coming it all back to that, like, tuning in practice, the only way for those limiting beliefs to not be so powerful for me is just learning that our brains will tell us things, and we can take them seriously, or we can sort of learn to let it go and not define us. So that's a continuing practice of I like to say, like, there's no such thing as truth. Anything you tell yourself, it's all subjective. It's all perspective anyway. Anything someone says to you, it's perspective, and a lot of times it reflects what they're dealing with. So yeah, there's no such thing as truth, I guess.
And it's just really important for us and for the people that are listening just to understand, like, there's so much more to life than what we've been told or what we've been trained or conditioned to think. You know what I mean? Like, that's something that continues to come up in my own mind, is like, and something that's been inside of me since I was a young kid, is like, there's just more, man. Like, don't settle. Like, don't give in to like don't believe yourself or others. And their way of living, or what everybody around you says. Like, it's just like like when I went to college, it's like I went to college because that's what everybody's doing.
Totally.
Not because of any other reason except for that's what everybody else is doing. And it's like, that's what I've got to do. You know what I mean? It's like it's this conditioned thing. You go to high school, you go to college, you get a decent job, you know, you get married, have kids, you know, and it's just and a lot of people are in that cycle, but it's like I've always
hamster wheel.
It's the hamster wheel, and the dog trying to chase the tail, and it's just like we've got to understand there's just more.
Yeah, and understand the power of those influences for sure. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, that's great. All right, cool. So we've been going a little over an hour, so just a few more things I want to touch on, if you don't mind. So why Colorado? Why was that kind of like the landing spot for you?
Yeah, you know when you just have a feeling about something and you don't really have a reason? I've come to this question and people are like, why did you move here? And I really just think I was drawn here. Okay. And it wasn't like the skiing. Like I said, I'm not a good skier. I'm not a mountain biker. I'm not a rock climber. Any of those things a lot of people do here. But I just felt like I wanted to be closer to the mountains. After spending time around mountains in New Zealand and not having spent time around mountains at all in Connecticut, I was really ready to just feel that beauty and power of nature being and like the beauty that is out here. I think it's really grounding to be in nature and to be reminded of how little you are and insignificant sometimes your problems will feel once you take a step away and kind of walk out into nature. I find that really helpful and soothing, and I was drawn to that, the access to the mountains that is here. Just for the perspective shift, I think it provides.
Yeah, I definitely, I mean, just, I mean, I don't know you except for our conversation right here, but just what you're sharing and just like the vibe I get from you, like, Colorado's it's your jam. It's right up your alley.
I love it here.
Yeah,
I do.
It's good.
Yeah,
there's just so many cool people. You know what I mean? And a lot of like-minded people, especially within health, wellness, and self-improvement and stuff.
Definitely.
So if there's a girl out there that's listening to your story, Natalie, and she's struggling with some of the things that you've struggled with, kind of that self-love, self-worthiness, maybe even the eating and things of that nature. What's a couple things that you would just like to say to her or the girls out there that are listening, just to kind of maybe guide them in the right direction or a better direction?
Yeah. Wow. My heart just goes out to anybody who's dealt with this before or is dealing with this, because I know how powerful and all-encompassing it can be. And a lot of times I think we really shame ourselves for not handling a situation the way we would have hoped in an ideal world. So the biggest thing I would say is that you're not alone, and there are people that can help you and want to help you and understand how powerful that those beliefs or social conditioning can be and how detrimental it can be if you find yourself in a situation where you don't know how to get yourself out of. So big thing for me, like I said, was just studying what food can do for your body, just accepting that who you are showing up in the world, doing your best is good enough, and really finding things that make you feel good that have nothing to do with food. Things that you're passionate about that you can enjoy and really like let go of that control and just relax. That was really helpful for me. And just, I don't know. I think asking for help is super helpful. People want to like be there for you, and with time, I think, and finding those passionate things, finding a strong person you can go to. That's something I didn't think I had. I didn't really feel like I had a lot of people I could share that with who wouldn't judge me or something, but really understanding that if you find those people in your life that you really can trust, and it's human connection is so powerful, and it can be so healing to hear other people's stories. So it's a hard one.
But it's I think the most powerful statement that you said there was you're not alone.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of times in life, and I've been in that situation where I feel alone. But we're not. There are, like you said, there are people that are willing to help, that will help.
Yeah.
But we have to come to that point where we realize we need the help and we have to reach out.
Yeah, and we're ready to help. Yeah.
We can't read people's minds, you know what I mean?
Right.
So.
And just you never know what someone's going through. The last thing I'll say about the eating piece is that eating specifically, like, just I think we need to change the way we talk about food to each other. We really, it can really be really of a challenge. And I know what really didn't help me was people commenting on my size or telling me that I was thin or not thin or whatever. It's just, I don't think we should be judging other people's. I think everyone's already getting so much pressure from themselves and society that, like, just don't shame people for eating a lot or little or healthy. Like I get health shamed a lot, and I don't think that's like a good healthy thing we should do. I think really it should be more empowering each other to find our way and not really impose anyone else's ideas of what's right and wrong on each other.
What's being health shamed?
There's like, oh God, it's so sad.
I've never heard that terminology.
I've had friends say to me like, oh, you're the healthy one. Of course you're not going to eat a cookie. And I'm like, I'll have a cookie right now. I don't care. Like what?
Right. Yeah,
or like, oh, you're not drinking. You're the healthy friend. Oh, you're so good. And I'm like, you have no idea.
Yeah,
Please, like, no, it's not true.
Right.
And a lot of it is just them reflecting that they feel bad that, I don't know, they feel bad about something that's going on in their lives and think that for some reason you're doing something better because it's different. And it's just not, that's just not a thing.
Right.
So health shaming, I think, is like giving people a hard time for ordering a salad.
Okay.
Like, just let people do what they want to do.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to talk about what you're eating. So let's just like stop talking about food in a negative way to each other.
And I believe that a lot of that language that we put out in the world is a direct reflection of what's going on inside of us, some sort of fear, anxiety, insecurity.
Totally,
you know what I mean?
yeah.
And especially when you have the confidence in yourself and know who you are and the way you're going to eat and show up in certain situations. People that don't know who they are and they don't have that confidence, it's like a threat.
Yeah.
And I think
that's a good point.
Especially like with females and just kind of your guys' dynamics and just kind of how you, I've never understood it, but like chicks like, I gotta go to the bathroom and she'll take 3 friends. So just those different dynamics. I think there's a lot that goes into a woman, there's just an insecurity when a woman knows who she is. She is confident. She knows how to show up. And then, then that gossip stuff. And I think it's just kind of one of those ingrained things in our culture.
Totally.
And something, too, I just want to share with you listeners that it's just heavy inside of me because obviously Natalie is a female and stuff, and we're talking about eating disorders and things of that nature. But, for any male listeners out there that are struggling with an eating disorder or body image, like I can relate to you 100% because I've struggled with eating and food and nutrition causes a lot of anxiety even to this day in my life, and body image. So if you're struggling, if you're going through an eating disorder, I definitely don't want to leave you guys out and want to say the exact same thing that Natalie encouraged the ladies out there is if you're going through something, you have to reach out, you have to ask for help. There are guys, myself included, that I've never had a quote-unquote eating disorder, but I've had a lot of struggles and anxiety around food and my physical training and my physical appearance. So dudes out there, if you need to talk to somebody or something like that, don't be afraid. There's no shame in that.
Yeah, and it's more common. So. I'm glad you said that because it is more common than is publicly known, and it's okay if you found yourself in a place that you're not happy with, and there's hope on the other side.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I just want to get it out there because I know just kind of in the traditional culture, like, us guys are supposed to show up in a certain way, and that's kind of like hold all of our feelings in, our emotions, and rough, tough, and it's like, dude, like I'm straight up a man's man, but like I'm also in touch with my feminine side, and I don't have a problem with, my feminine side. I don't have a problem with sharing my feelings and emotions. Now, I'm not going to go around and share them with anybody, but like there's a time and a place.
Totally.
And
we're just humans. We're wired to have emotions. It's
For
okay.
Sure.
Yeah.
And just like it's cool when a chick, like chicks, you guys have a feminine side, you have a masculine side, and a chick that shows up with some of that masculine, it's beautiful. It's cool.
Yeah, it's cool.
We all have both, and there's nothing wrong with it. Just be you. I think that's kind of the story of this conversation is be you.
Yeah.
Be beautiful, walk in the confidence of who you are, and take care of business, So
totally.
couple more questions here, Natalie, and then we're gonna wrap it up.
Cool.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Oh gosh.
I knew this would be a tough one for you because if somebody asked me that, I'd be like, dude, like I'm just trying to make it through today. I have no clue. But.
No, it's so true. Okay, 5 years. I hope I'm still podcasting.
Okay.
Hopefully it's more of a full-time thing than it is now.
Yeah.
I want to just keep learning and growing and developing myself. I love getting older. Like, I just think every year of my life, I'm just proud of how I'm showing up and how much I'm attempting to learn and grow and be the best version of myself. So I hope in 5 years it just keeps going and can keep meeting inspired people like yourself and podcasting. I just think this is doing a lot of good for me and for others and sharing these stories. So honestly, like, that's my biggest goal right now. Hopefully doing it full time though.
Cool.
Yeah.
Making income, right?
Yeah.
Let's be real. Like, I would love to, not be spending money to do the podcast, but actually, at least covering some of the expenses and having a little cash flow come in, because that's cool.
That's cool. I mean, it's cool to be incentivized to do something you love. That's everyone's dream, really.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, the question that I ask all my guests, just to kind of wrap things up and finish things up, is what sets your soul on fire, Natalie?
Different than what I've shared, I would say human connection 100%.
Yep.
And like sunrises and sunsets. The reminder that there's more to life than the little things or the big things that we get caught up in. And just, I think deep conversations with friends sets my soul on fire. It just makes me feel awesome. Sharing health and wellness and positivity and realness with people, just that real aspect of what it means to be human, what it takes to develop who you are, just that whole thing, and just being in nature and being reminded that, we're just a part of this world. It's not all about us.
Right.
we have to consider everybody and the environment we live in, and I think just being alive sets my soul on fire. Cool. This life is awesome, and I feel so grateful to be where I am today.
Great. Yeah, you're the third female in the last month that on the podcast as a guest. That's their answer when I asked that, what sets your soul on fire, is connection. Yeah. So the other two girls, I'll give you their information, because like you three would be you guys would set some stuff on fire if you got together. So
that'd be great.
No, that's really cool. So cool. All right, so Natalie, I just want to thank you for your time today and for sharing your story and just being transparent and authentic and just kind of putting yourself out there. I really, really appreciate that. And thanks for having me over to your home. And if somebody wants to reach out to you, connect with you, find out about your podcast, please, just at this time, just kind of share where people can get connected with you.
Yeah. Before I do that, just thank you for doing this.
Yeah, for sure.
You're obviously so passionate about this and
I love it.
Have a really good knack for it and a way of getting someone to share their story.
Thank you. And
as someone who's not interviewed and usually in your seat, it was super insightful for me. So cool. Thanks for doing what you do.
Thank you.
To find me, my Instagram is naturally_nomadic. My name's Natalie, so that's where the naturally comes in. And I do have a blog. I'm trying to push and write more. It's called notanotherwellnessblog.com. And then the podcast, Not Another Wellness Podcast.
Perfect.
Available everywhere podcasts are available. And got a fun upcoming episodes, and I'm really excited where that's headed. So I would love for you listening to be a part of that.
Great. All right. So listeners, just want to thank you again for hanging out with myself and Natalie today on the 127 Fit podcast. If you guys want to reach out to me, you can find me on Instagram. Instagram is my jam. I love Instagram. It's so cool. It's at 127 Fitness. Facebook is at Quentin Vars. If you are listening to the podcast on the iTunes Apple app, please leave a 5-star review. Leave a comment. That would be great. If you think you'd be a great guest, or if you have a friend or an acquaintance or some people in the state of Colorado that you think would be a great guest or guests, you can just send me an email. Reach out to me through the email, and that email is 127fit@gmail.com, And if you are finding just great value in the guests I'm bringing on, if you're finding great value in the podcast in general and overall, please just share that like on your Facebook stories, Instagram stories, and use the hashtag be someone to follow. The more of you guys and gals that share on social media, the more people are going to see it, listen to it, and get positively impacted. So just do me a favor and just start sharing the stuff, especially like on Instagram and stories. That would be super cool. Per the usual, I will leave you with Proverbs 24:10, which states, "If you faint in the day of adversity, your strength is small." This time, until next time, I will catch you guys later.